we are here at Vapor Central at 667 Yonge Street on the second floor for part of the Karma Cup Speaker Series.
So we're at Vapor Central 2018 Karma Cup Speaker Series.
Hi, everyone. Hello, it's on. What up, Vapor Central? I like that you waved. Nobody waves back. Thank you. There you go. Hey. So we are going to be continuing our Karma Cup Speaker Series. Up next, we have Gordon Hagen. He is the professional cannabis research scientist at Peace Naturals and Kronos Group. That is a really cool job title, and I can only imagine that in his role, he's doing a lot of really interesting, cool, scientific-y things with cannabis. So, Gordon, do you want to come up? Sweet. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thanks for the intro, and thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk today. I get to talk about, what I do, which is cannabis science. So it's going to be a PowerPoint, so screen's not huge. If you guys want to come up as close as you can, there's some cool pictures and videos I'm sure you'll be interested in, especially if you guys are into extracts at all. All right, so my title today, or the title of my talk is Regulatory Challenges Associated with Cannabis Extraction in Canada. So I'll get right into it. All right, before I get going, gotta say some disclaimers here. Just because we're a publicly traded company, these are forward-looking statements. These are for discussion purposes only. In no way am I saying you're gonna make money investing in us, okay? So it's just some cautionary statements I have to say. All right, so just an overview of my talk today. I'll introduce Kronos Group, what we do, who we are, just so you guys can understand where we came from and what we do. I'll get into extraction, so that's what I do. And then I'll talk about the Health Canada regulations regarding extractions and extracted products. Okay. All right, so Kronos Group is a licensed producer, and it owns multiple producers across the globe. So we've got operations in Canada, Australia, Israel, Colombia, right? So we're globally diversified, vertically integrated cannabis company. All right, so we have four pillars of strategy, and that's being growth capacity, international distribution, branding, and intellectual property. All right, so just a little map highlighting where we are. We're in Canada, European Union, Israel here, Australia, and Colombia just came online last week, so that's pretty exciting. All right, so Kronos Group started with kind of acquiring Peace Naturals, which was, a licensed producer in the Stayner area, so that's kind of by Wasaga Beach, Ontario. So it's a state-of-the-art 325,000 square foot indoor grow facility. And I'm talking about indoor. It's not 325,000 square feet of greenhouse. It's 325,000 feet of indoor grow. So you can see the picture here. It's hard to put it in context how massive that is, but it's I think something like 6 football fields big of indoor grow space. So it's gigantic. We also have a 30,000 square foot greenhouse that's an R&D greenhouse. So we try to learn as much as we can about greenhouse growing in a small 30,000 square foot greenhouse, and then take those best practices and give them to our Colombian partners or our Israeli partners, or where the climates are better for growing greenhouse cannabis. But as far as Canada goes, it's indoor, right? We've got horrible winters here, but we want ideal climates for growing cannabis. You got to put it inside a building. All right, we also have over 150 different genetic cultivars at Peace Naturals. We have a custom-built CO2 extraction department with lots of post-processing, equipment. Our facilities are GMP certified, good manufacturing practices. That allows us to export around the globe with our cannabis. So that's a little bit about Peace Naturals' capabilities. And I think we have a really interesting history too. So I'll just get into, the history of Peace Naturals. And I'm sure Matt Murnoff here could speak a bit more about the history because he's been around since day one. But in 2013, we were the first non-incumbent Health Canada licensed producer in Canada. So we were number one, which is pretty cool to be, federally regulated, federally licensed. We got our first oil license in 2015, so that was using the bubble hash method. Is anyone here familiar with that? Straining cannabis through the mesh bags in cold water. So Health Canada actually granted us the first license in all of Canada to do that, and that's how we used to do it. right? In 2016, that's when Kronos Group came in and purchased Peace Naturals. In 2016, we were also the first company in the world to export cannabis legally, which is really cool. In 2017, Germany came and inspected us and gave us that GMP certification. So, we had our proper SOPs, proper sanitation procedures, validated all of our growing methods, and the German government gave us a license to, export our cannabis to the European Union. So in 2017, we started building this building called B4, which is over 200,000 square feet. And in 2018, it was completed. So 1 year to build that monster, massive, giant building. And then also this year, we were the first cannabis company in the world to be traded on a US stock market. So the NASDAQ, so we're traded on the NASDAQ. All right, so Peace Naturals, kind of the distribution and the brand. So distribution is always going to be in Canada. And we're also going to distribute to all the medicinal countries in the world. So Germany and Poland right now, with more coming online. And branding is Peace Naturals is a medicinal brand first. So the whole thing about Peace Naturals, medicinal cannabis, right? That's why I'm a scientist working there. I'm working on the medicinal research of cannabis. We want to make people's lives better, right? And that's what Peace Naturals is about. So it's a medicinally forward-focused brand, but it's all about the patients and improving people's lives. All right, so the other big ownership that Kronos Group has in Canada is OGBC. So OGBC is based in the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia. It's a 2,500 square foot pilot facility, and it's all about premium genetics, artisanal craft grows, specifically curated genetics, and it's all hand processed. So actually the two growers who work here live here. Their house is their workplace, right? So it is true artisanally craft-grown cannabis. So OGBC is our platform for our recreational brands, and it's just focused on small batch sizes and handcrafted cannabis. So the one brand that we launched this week out of OGBC is Cove. So Cove was born in the Okanagan Valley, which is known for the dopest dope in the world, right? So Okanagan Valley, BC Bud, that's where Cove's coming from. So it came together from, picking our favorite genetics that we had at Peace Naturals, dialing them in at OGBC, and just having that really finely grown, perfect genetic, processing and selecting the best colas from every harvest for that brand. Also, all the extracted products coming out of there, none of it's going to go through any solvent post-processing. It's going to be as natural and full spectrum as possible. So it's kind of our top quality brand. Right, and there's also a pop-up store that came up 600 King Street West. So go check it out. We partnered with Beta 5 Chocolatiers, so we're serving up some fine chocolates and educating you all about our brand. So go check it out. It's open for, I believe, another week or two. Yeah, it's really cool, so check it out. All right, so another ownership by Kronos Group is in Israel. So we partnered with a kibbutz, which is a socialist farming kind of co-op community, and we've created a greenhouse grow in Israel. So it's going to be super low cost, but also a premium cannabis because Israel has some of the best conditions in the world naturally for growing cannabis. It grows like a weed there. So we also have Kronos Australia, another partnership. So this is more to open up to, the Australia-Asia market and get our foot in the door there. So indoor grow in Australia as well. We just announced a joint venture in Leamington. We're going to build some massive greenhouses there, some multi-million square foot greenhouses. Right? It's all going to be GMP certified so we can export it all over the world. And then we've also announced our joint venture down in Colombia, where it's going to be another massive greenhouse project with GMP compliant cannabis. So we've partnered with MedMen to create MedMen Canada. So anywhere there's going to be private legalized retail, it's going to be Kronos Group and MedMen 50-50 partnership. So we're going to supply them with all our cannabis. Right? MedMen is huge in the States. I don't know how many people are familiar with MedMen, but people call it like the Apple Store of cannabis dispensaries. It's a very much one-on-one experience with bud tenders who actually use the product and they know what they're talking about. So we've partnered with them to distribute all of our products where we can. All right, we distribute through Dell Pharma and Pol Boskamp in the European Union right now, so that's Poland and Germany respectively, and then there's other medical jurisdictions coming online soon. So finally, so this is my favorite partnership that we've done. So this was just announced this week, kind of a cool deal. So we've partnered with a company called Ginkgo Bioworks. And what it is Ginkgo Bioworks is going to take the DNA and the genes out of the cannabis plant, and they're going to put it in yeast, and we're going to brew pure THC just like you would brew alcohol. Or we're going to brew pure CBD, pure CBC, right? So it's a pretty cool like scientific experiment, but it's also huge on the economic side. So this whole project is contingent on the idea that they're going to produce a kilogram of purified 99% THC for $1,000 or less. A purified kilogram of THCV for $1,000 or less. You can't even get THCV at a kilogram scale right now, pulling it from plants. We're going to genetically modify yeast to make us those rare cannabinoids, and we're going to start determining the medicinal effects of these cannabinoids that you otherwise wouldn't have access to a large amount, right? Everyone here is familiar with the entourage effect. That's all the cannabinoids working together. It's not just THC. It's not just CBD. There's hundreds of other cannabinoids, and they're in tiny, tiny, tiny little amounts growing naturally on the plant. Well, what this project is going to do, we're going to take these rare cannabinoids and we're going to produce purified kilograms of it, start reintroducing them together and be like, you know, you have this ailment, we've got this cannabinoid cocktail that can do it specifically. So this is going to help us launch our, you know, pharmaceutical kind of formulations moving forward. All right, so that's Kronos Group. Had to plug it. But now I can talk about, you know, the real thing here, and that's the regulatory, you know, restrictions we have as extractors in the industry. So just a short background about myself. I study at University of Ontario Institute of Technology. It's in Oshawa, Ontario. So I have a background in molecular biology and synthetic organic chemistry. So my graduate studies, I chemically modified RNA molecules to make chemotherapeutics, and then I tested them in vitro cell lines to do preclinical assessments of those chemotherapeutics that I was creating. So then after my graduate studies, I became a lab manager at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Go Blue. So I was running a virology and bacteriology research laboratory. So we were studying antibiotic resistance and disease resistance in general, and actually working with patients in the hospital, cycling through antibiotics to try and prevent, you know, breakout of antibiotic-resistant bacteria at the hospital at University of Michigan. And then I made the transition over to the cannabis industry. You know, somebody I went to school with told me, hey, Gord, I got a pretty sweet gig. We need somebody who can set up the extraction lab here at Emblem. And I'm like, you know, I love my job. I love working with disease. I want to cure disease. He's like, no. Sold me on the whole medicinal side of it. And then I, you know, immediately switched careers when I learned how medicinal cannabis was. So I went to Emblem and I developed all of their oil production methods there and worked on their research and development projects. And then that's when I got headhunted by Kronos Group. So they found me, they approached me and offered me a job to, you know, kind of run the extraction lab and work on the R&D department there. So I switched over to Peace Naturals about 2 years ago. So there I'm kind of in charge of the oil production, and I do all the chemical and analytical research and development work there. So that's my background. So let's talk about extraction, right? So the medicinal compounds in cannabis, they're kind of locked up in the flower is kind of how I see it. So they're in the trichomes formed on the bud. The trichomes are producing all the cannabinoids and producing all of the terpenes, right? They're physically bound to it. And they're also in their non-psychoactive acidic form. So a bud is full of THCA, which isn't psychoactive. It actually needs to be heated to turn into THC, right? So that means you have to combust and inhale this cannabis product to get, you know, the activated form of these cannabinoids. Right? It's not the best way to consume cannabis is inhaling it and smoking it. Vaporizing is very safe, but most people still, you know, light joints, light bongs. It's not good to breathe in all of that stuff because just through the process of combustion, you're breathing in all these carcinogens, carbon monoxides being formed. You're actually destroying some of the cannabinoids. You're destroying the terpene profile. So there's got to be a better way to consume it. So then there is, right? Extraction and separation is how we get all these medicinal compounds out of the plant and then reformulate it into the different products so you don't have to smoke everything. You can have creams, you can have patches, you can have oils, right? So that's what I do. I extract cannabis. That's what I do for a living, right? So just some basics about extraction, very, very, very general overview. It's broken into two types. There's physical extraction, and then there's chemical extraction. So physical extraction is simply just like removing those cannabinoids physically. So the best example I could think of was keef, right? Everybody's got a little grinder with a little crystal catcher in the bottom. You're actually performing extraction when you're taking those crystals because it's the purified form of those trichomes. You've literally pulled those medicinal ingredients away from the plant, right? So, you can scale this up and have large tumblers with large screens that actually sift dried cannabis, and you can collect that crystal and that keef. And there's actually a couple licensed producers that are selling that product now. I forget exactly which licensed producer, but they sell, tumbled cannabis and the crystal, right? So then there's hash, and that's pretty much compressing all that keef into a solid block. And then there's everyone's favorite kind of concentrate, live resin. I really like this. It's such a neat way to do it. But that's where you flash freeze the plant right at harvest when it's still wet, and then you squeeze it between hot plates, and all that terpy, cannabinoidy goodness comes out. This is probably the best way to extract. It's really, really nice, but it's got very low margins, so it's not that economical, but it is probably one of the higher quality products when you're looking for that full flower experience, right? It's got everything in there, right? So that's physical extraction. That's just physically manipulating the cannabis, but there's also chemical extraction. So the whole kind of theoretical side of chemical extraction is you solubilize those medicinal chemicals and then you concentrate them. So what I mean by that is like when you dissolve sugar in water, you're solubilizing that sugar. Same thing with the cannabinoids on the cannabis plant. You're just dissolving them into a certain solvent and then concentrating them that way. So there's a couple popular methods of chemical extraction right now. Hydrocarbon extraction was a butane propane. That's where you get your shatters from. CO2 extraction, so that's using CO2 under certain pressures and temperatures to solubilize the cannabinoids, and you get some nice extracts with that. And then there's also alcohol extractions using ethanol or isopropyl alcohol. Right. So after extraction, there's a whole bunch of steps you can take to purify those extracts and make them, more pure, more great. So the first and most common one is winterization, and that's removing all the fats and waxes that come out during chemical extraction. You got to evaporate all the solvents, so whether you're doing butane extraction or alcohol extraction or you've come out of winterization, you got to get all those solvents out of the way. You don't want to be smoking or consuming solvents at all. So there's many forms of solvent evaporation. After that, you can do some distillation, so that's using the particular boiling point of each cannabinoid to boil them away separately from your extract and concentrate them that way. And then after that, there's further purifications you can do. You can do flash chromatography to get 99.9% of any cannabinoid you want, or there's some crystallization and recrystallization methods. So any CBD isolate you see is probably a crystallization. All right, so what do we do with this product after we've done whatever post-processing? Well, we can make a variety of products, right? Tincture oils, capsules, any kind of edible, any kind of cream, patches, vape pens, you name it. You can consume it a million ways once you extract that cannabis. Right, so right now I've bolded the tincture oils and capsules. Right now those are the only products we're legally allowed to make and sell in Canada, right? So I'll get back to that when I talk more about the regulations, but just keep that in mind. So my job as an extractor, I use CO2 extractor. So the reason we use CO2 is it's very safe, it's not toxic, there's nothing explosive about it, there's no flammable solvents being used. It's really easy to operate because there's lots of great extraction companies that make automated extraction machines. You load it up, set your parameters, you walk away, it runs for several hours, you come back and you unload it. Super easy, super hands-off, super automated. CO2 extraction is actually really selective and really flexible. You can pull out cannabinoids separate. You can pull out terpenes separate. You can do many kind of shades of gray in between that as well. And then there seems to be quite a bit of regulatory acceptance when it comes to CO2 extraction. It is the most widely used extraction method by Health Canada approved, growers and producers. So just a bit of theory of how supercritical CO2 works. So it's a loop cycle. So you've got your CO2 storage. It goes through a compressor that gets it up to a certain pressure. It goes through a heater that gets it up to a certain temperature. And then it flows through a big pressurized column that you've loaded up with your plant material. So what happens at a very specific pressure, very specific temperature, cannabinoids dissolve in that CO2. It then carries those cannabinoids through to a separator where you drop that pressure, drop that temperature, and all your cannabinoids drop out as an extract. The CO2 is then condensed, recycled, and looped through again to pick up more cannabinoids. So it's a pretty simple process of solubilizing, crashing it out, solubilizing, crashing it out until you've picked up all the cannabinoids in that plant material. All right, so I've got some videos here that are pretty interesting. So here's a White Widow THC extract here that I'm transferring from the collection container into a cup. So as you can see, it flows a lot like distillate in this, and it's pretty solid but also pretty flowing. So that's kind of the quality of product I can pull out of the extractor, crude extract. All right. So then on the right-hand side here, this is a terpene collection. So I've done a method where, I set those pressures and temperatures not to pick up cannabinoids, but pick up all the terpenes in that plant. So a terpene water mixture comes out. You can see the water layer bubble kind of on the bottom. I'll replay that video. So it actually pulls out water and the terpenes. So the bottom layer being water, top layer being purified cannabis terpenes. So it's a mixture of over 250 different terpenes that are being pulled out and concentrated during the CO2 extraction. So I can actually take those terpenes and reintroduce them back into my products, and it's the exact same terpene profile as the plant. So you're getting that whole entourage effect. Okay. So here's just a picture showing the flexibility of CO2 extraction. You can change those pressures, you can change those temperatures, and you can get something from basically a glass clear or yellowish distillate all the way to the blackest, muddiest sludge that you could think of, right? So it's all about how you set those pressures, how you set those temperatures, and how much time you run it for. So obviously down here at the bottom right, we've got some black extract. So that's got a ton of chlorophyll, other pigment molecules in there. It's got a lot of remainder, I would say, plant material. So it's probably like 60% THC in that. Up here at the top left, we've got pretty much honey extract, and that tested at above 90% THC. So CO2 has that flexibility to make whatever kind of extract you want. Just depends on your procedures and how you do it. Yeah?
CBN varieties with the red tilt in the middle?
The CBN, yeah, and you can adjust CBN amounts by decarbing your cannabis way too long before you extract, or extracting at super high temperatures. So there's cool ways to manipulate extraction and what you collect. All right, and then there's also more than cannabinoids. There's more than terpenes. So I've got the analytical instrumentation in-house to determine, my extract contains this amount of flavonoids and this amount of alkaloids and this amount of pigment molecules. So here's just kind of a picture of all the samples I've prepped for my HPLC and my GCMS, so we can test all of the cannabinoids, the terpenes, the flavonoids, the alkaloids, right? And also, I've been playing around with getting some THCA crystals straight out of the extractor. So I put in wet cannabis, freshly harvested, very light, very gentle CO2 extractions, and I'm getting like THCA crystals pelleting out, which you can take and crystallize and purify further. It's just a little experiment for fun. All right, so that's what I can do with the extractor, but Health Canada requires it be very diluted. So the only product we actually sell is diluted tincture oil. So that's where I take that extract that's 80, 90% cannabinoids, and I dilute it down to 3% or less. I'll get more into that in the next couple slides. But one thing I want to highlight about this picture, at Peace Naturals, we make strain-specific oils. So because I can pull out those terpenes and the cannabinoid profile, I'm only going to take a diesel and extract a diesel and then make a diesel oil with the diesel terpenes, the diesel cannabinoids in it. A lot of other competitors in the field are just sweeping together all the shake, all the leftovers, they don't care, and they're just bulk extracting everything. Whereas at Peace Naturals, every strain that we grow has an oil associated with it. So we've got over 25 different SKUs of oil on the store. All right, so extract-based cannabis products. So I just took a picture here of when I visited, California last year. And it was amazing to walk into the dispensaries, much like the dispensaries here, and you can buy anything your heart desires. You can buy drinks, you can buy edibles, you can buy extracts, you can buy concentrates, you can buy vape pens, creams, lotions, patches, you name it. But where are they in Canada? Where are they on the licensed producers? Like, why don't we have this variety? Well, it's because of the regulations, okay? So the governing body that kind of oversees all of the licensed legal producers in Canada is Health Canada. So they set forth the rules and they write the laws. So there's 2 acts we have to follow right now. We're transitioning from one into another for the recreational market, and one is going to exist forever in the medical market. So the medical one is the Access to Cannabis for Medical Purposes Regulations, which was drafted in 2016. So it's part of the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, regulated by Health Canada. And now, as of October 17th, a new Cannabis Act is coming called the Cannabis Act. So it amends the ACMPR and the Criminal Code and other acts and creates this new law that we have to follow. So all Health Canada licensed producers must follow both these regulations. Okay? So the first regulation I want to point out is the maximum yield quantities of THC. So it's very, very, very clearly outlined. Cannabis oil cannot exceed 30 milligrams of THC per milliliter. That's 3%. So it's very clearly spelled out that you have to make it 3% or less or you can't sell it. Okay? If we do capsules, it very clearly says each capsule must not exceed 10 milligrams of THC in that capsule. So your maximum dose per capsule is 10 milligrams. So, you can go to a dispensary down the road and get a 30 milligram, 40 milligram, 50 milligram capsule. So you only have to take one capsule. But with the Health Canada products, 10 milligrams is the absolute maximum. So some people are popping like 20, 30 capsules at a time just to get the dose they require. So that's the practical, implications we're working with limits on the THC. All right, there's also huge barriers regarding additives or formulations of any kind. So it states in the ACMPR that cannabis oil must not be sold with any additives other than those necessary to maintain the product's quality or stability. Okay, that being key here. So I'm just kind of highlighting products' quality and stability. So basically, we can use one dilutant, and that's it. So if we choose vegetable oil to dilute our cannabis extract in, we can only use that one single vegetable oil. If we use 2 oils, Health Canada says that's now an additive because you only needed your first oil, right? At Peace Naturals, we use a pharmaceutical grade medium chain triglyceride, so that's derived from coconuts, and that's our one and only one oil that we diluted in. Okay. Hydropothecary had a really interesting way to work around this law. Before they introduced their first oil product, they diluted it in mint oil. So they added flavor, and no one else had flavor. So they made a breath spray, which kudos to them. That's a very clever way to get around this additive law. They've diluted it in an oil that actually tastes like mint. So they're the only ones with like an exciting kind of, product that tastes like something other than cannabis. Okay. There's also 2 other really clever examples of getting around this additive regulation. So Afria, they sell their oil, but they also sell alongside the oil powdered emulsifiers. So what they do is they tell you, take your oil, put it in a cup, add this package of emulsifiers and flavors, mix it together, and then pour it into a glass of water. So you can make your own cannabis drink at home. So they're not actually adding any additives to the product. They're just selling the additives alongside the product. So MedRelief is also doing this with their cream. They sell a base cream. They sell their oil. They tell you, go home, mix it together, and then use that cream accordingly. So it's clever ways to get around the act. Get this. Here's the kicker. The new Cannabis Act came out, and it now restricts that. So it says any component of a cannabis product other than the cannabis, as well as the cannabis accessory that is packaged with, must not, through chemical means other than heating or combustion, alter or enhance the effects of those cannabinoids. So that means no more emulsifiers being sold alongside, no more base creams. We're actually taking a step backwards with the new Cannabis Act. We can't, get around these limitations anymore. So the new regulations are more strict than the ACMPR. There's no additives to be sold alongside the products anymore. And they've also added a stipulation about no flavor. So you can't impart a particular flavor on your cannabis product. So what Hydro Apothecary was doing with their mint oil, we'll see if that can continue, because that's adding a flavor. We'll see. Right, so cannabis oil also must be in liquid form. So I mentioned earlier that THC can't exceed 30 milligrams per mil. Well, what about CBD? This liquid form kind of prevents us from going super high with CBD concentrates either. So not sure how much experience you guys have with CBD, but if you have a CBD concentrate, once it gets around 60-70% concentrate, after time it starts crystallizing and turning into a solid. So now you can't do very concentrated CBD simply because your cannabis extract must be at liquid form at room temperature. So there goes concentrated CBD. I think the highest CBD on the market is 60 milligrams per mil, which is only like 6%. Like it's really dilute, right? So we got to work within these regulations, and that kind of liquid stipulation prevents us from making really concentrated CBD products. All right, so just kind of in summary, what is allowed under the new regulations and the old ones? Well, we can still sell dried cannabis flower, and they're actually letting us do pre-rolled joints as well. So you'll see those in October 17th. They will still do the diluted tincture oil. It still has the same limit, 30 milligrams a mil or less, so it's 3%. And then capsules, whether they be hard caps or soft gels. So what's restricted is everything else. Shatter, edibles, concentrates, creams, patches, you name it, we can't do it. So that's the regulations we're working with. So you saw how much I can do with my CO2 extractor, but now you understand the one product I can make, right? I'm with you guys. I want to make all these products. Our hands are tied by the regulations right now. So in summary, regulations regarding extraction and extracted products are pretty restrictive. Legal cannabis extractors, which are licensed by Health Canada, have very few options on product development, right? We can R&D it all day long. We've got working models of everything. We can't actually sell it or distribute it yet. So we're going to continue following the regulations set forth by Health Canada, but we're going to try and work with them to educate them and push for more innovative, less restrictive laws so we can do some product development and some value-added products. So Kronos Group is a world-class producer that I work at with capacity, quality, branding, distribution, and intellectual property to innovate and produce world-class extract products as those regulations grow and change. So, that's my talk today. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate your time.
And be down there for the vendors. There's 60 to 80 vendors down there or something?
There's going to be live art. There's going to be live glass blowing. There's music.
Weed, lots of it.
The festival is going to be off the hook.